your host, Fred Smart.
Kind of an absence of several months, if not better part of the year, that Wayne Walton, our guest tonight, has been on with us. Associate Wayne, his voice, his energy, being up there in the high mountains with Leo the lion, the image of the lion, is an archetype of the lion from the tribe of Judah, our Lord Jesus Christ, when he overturned the tables in the temple. He sent some very strong messages to mankind, and Wayne, in his voice and in his record and his outreach of activism, focused like a laser on this topic, is really at the leading cutting edge of this discussion, spiritually, materially, and otherwise. Wayne has been, over the last several months, spending some time, along with some colleagues of his, visiting and networking and talking with pastors and people inside these churches in various Bible study groups. And this is something I think we all can do. A lot of us have connections to places of worship, to prayer study opportunities, meetings, etc. And the smallest little thing that we can do, make our voice, our presence known in these critical matters. This word, this information is going to get out there, and we need to treat it in a very positive way. And Wayne's on the call tonight to provide us with an update on some encouraging examples of what he's done in his outreach. Thank you, Wayne, for coming back on the call. We really appreciate your voice and all that you're doing.
I appreciate you having me on, Fred. It's so important to have outlets such as yours that are open to a truly alternative path that even talks about usury. When you look around the internet and major revolutionary group, whether it's from Occupy side or Tea Party, this issue of usury gets overlooked despite it being a foundational sin over thousands and thousands of years, and our entire system is built upon usury. So when you investigate this topic, it reveals both the problem, the root cause problem, and a solution, which is it defies logic in some ways how easy it is potentially for us to emancipate ourselves.
Wayne, I sent an email an image to Steve and Dee Dee. Possibly it could be posted on the newsletter tonight, but this is a picture of Pope Francis, and I'll quote something that he said recently. I don't have the exact date, but he said, "We must say we want a just system, a system that enables everyone to get on. We must say we don't want this globalized economic system which does us so much harm." That's almost like opening the door to this discussion that we could all have. I mean, in the Pope's words, he didn't mention usury, but this is exactly what is harming us, mankind, civilization in general.
Yes, very true. And I had noticed that he did actually have a quote specifically on usury maybe 4 or 5 months ago. It's just that the issue is talk is cheap. So meanwhile, the church will condemn usury. They've got a new Orwellian newspeak version of what that means as to mean excessive interest. That's not what Moses and Joshua and Jesus or Muhammad believed. Usury is any interest. When people look at that, they just go, I don't see what the big deal about usury is. And I understand it. Just, what does it matter? Interest, and it doesn't seem like that's that big of a deal. But what we're really talking about foundationally, everything that we're complaining about is about usurpation. And usury creates usurpation, whereby a tiny, tiny minority of human beings rule over the masses of planet Earth. We're all in this spaceship, and it's hurling through space at thousands of miles an hour. And fortunately, our Creator gave us an operating manual to make sure that we could literally have the kingdom of heaven. It should be paradise. It should be the promised land. Unfortunately, because the money power has hijacked the sovereignty of both God humanity and our government, the money power is now ruling with a tiny, tiny minority, just with a few families, Rockefeller, Rothschild, et cetera, et cetera. And it's not that we should focus on those individuals. We need to focus on the system, as Pope Francis was saying. And that system is simply that rather than, a tiny minority issuing money, the masses need to be able to issue money in the exact same way that a restaurant owner issues a gift certificate. And what happens typically when you bring this issue up among libertarians, they basically have been programmed to believe that paper money itself is evil. But in the same way that any technology could be used for good or evil, like we don't blame guns for killing people. Guns don't need to be banned, nor does paper money need to be banned. So just as an example, we use paper and digital money, and it operates perfectly well when a producer issues the money. So long as a producer issues the money in the form of a gift certificate, for instance, there's Super Bowl tickets that cost thousands of dollars and they're made of paper. There's no major issues with them. We have frequent flyer miles. That's an IOU issued by a producing airline. That forms as a form of currency that on your, when you're on the Delta Airlines and the Sky Mile book, you can buy all kinds of electronics. So even though you earned frequent flyer miles, you can use them to purchase all kinds of different things. So I'm just articulating a variety of different ways that producer-issued paper and digital money works for us, it serves us when the producer issues it. And additionally, think of like your local high school football game. They issue tickets for that. They are paper tickets. And the community issues them. There's no problems with counterfeiting or overissuance. Overissuance leads to basically inflation. So what we're doing is we're demonstrating that paper and digital money works locally. And that's what we want to do, is to defeat this globalist New World Order, is to return sovereignty to the people locally where they are put back in charge. And the problem with commodity-based money is that, number one, it's scarce, and that the regular people don't have it. I don't have a gold mine, a silver mine, or a Bitcoin mine, but I have a business where I make marketing videos for businesses here in Summit County with mountain hours, and I can issue mountain hours the same as a restaurant owner issues a gift certificate. So by us creating an abundant money system, you need to have abundant money, because this is so pivotally important. There will never be any revolution at all until the have-not have more money than the elite. Because we have to hire the enforcers at some point. Otherwise, the enforcers are always going to work for the less than 1%, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that is foundational. Whether there's even a government, even if we dissolve government right now, a la Adam Kokesh, the super elite still control all the gold, silver, Bitcoin mines, uranium mines, diamond mines. So what would happen is you would eliminate government, but you'd still have a tiny minority have control of the majority of the land, the resources. Therefore, they would have abundant money, and they would be the ones hiring the enforcers, and we'd still have, stormtrooper police beating us down because, a certain number of us will be starving, and we protest, and the elite would still be protecting their property with private mercenaries instead of government mercenaries. So the only way you can change that money power grapple over humanity's everything, they control our history, our present, and our future by monopolizing money. So the only way that we will be able to change that is if you think of money as like rewards, like how you train a dog, or ammunition. We need to have more rewards and ammunition than the elite do. And once we have that, then we can offer the enforcers a better deal so that they come and work for us instead of working for the super elite. If we base our money system on any kind of physical thing, basically Mammon or the money power they bought all of those things, including our houses, which, just under suspicion of being a terrorist or whatever, they can seize everything we own and just take it without any due process. So history repeats, and our Creator gave us a strategy because our ancient ancestors suffered from the same form of slavery, not with the same level of technology, however, with the same level of control where they monopolized the elite, the money power, monopolized everything. They hired a private army in order to protect their land and gold and mines and et cetera, and the people lived in scarcity until they finally rose up and said, we're not going to pay your debts. And they would call this thing a Jubilee. And that's why in the Old Testament, and that's what we have to do is Jesus said, in order to enter the kingdom of heaven, we have to make our minds again like a child. So all of the things that we've learned about governments being powerful or the bankers being powerful or the Fed is the problem, let's forget all of those things, or that paper money is worthless, or if we can forget all of those things and realize that there's all sorts of propaganda out there surrounding the money issue, because that is the central place of Mammon's control. It's Satan's, literally, it's Satan's control over the physical world. And we have to acknowledge that this is a war, and our Creator gave us a nonviolent path to win our emancipation. And that is through this path where we issue our own money based upon our own value, not our physical holdings, because we have-nots don't have anything. But what mountain hours allow, or a usury-free money system, there's about 6 different types of usury-free money systems that you'll almost never, ever hear about. Like a gift certificate is a usury-free form of money. There's no monopoly. There's no interest. There's no inflation. There's no, generally there's no counterfeiting. You never hear about there might be small instances where a grocery store has their coupons counterfeited, but it's not like a major problem. And it's really our only option. The only type of money that regular people can issue is paper and digital, because I don't have a gold mine. And by the way, I live in Summit County, right? This entire state, and particularly this county, was established from gold mining. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right in my backyard, there is they call them tailings. There's a tailings pile, and what that is that there's rivers, and they put a barge in the middle of the river, and they would dredge the river up looking for gold, and the tailings was all the leftover rock. So it would form these little rock islands in the middle of a river. There's literally one right behind my house. Like I can throw a penny at it, right? The thing is, even though there's no gold here. So even in a place where there was massive gold mining, even here there's no gold. And it's not like we're all walking around with gold. Like if you bumped into 100 people, I defy you to that, maybe one of them would have some gold on them or something, a gold coin or a silver coin or something.
Sure.
So now because of that, gold and silver is really good as a defensive strategy, but we need an offensive strategy. It's time for us to go on the strategic initiative, and the only way we can go on the strategic initiative is to build a system that is entirely outside of Mammon's control. And then from there, hire the enforcers, hire the local government, and create so much abundance rather than there's a quote by Buckminster Fuller that goes, You never try to change the existing reality by fighting it. You build a new model that makes the old model obsolete. So rather than complaining about the Federal Reserve or complaining about the government, that makes us powerless like children, right? But by taking responsibility is the flip side of freedom. We take personal responsibility that we are going to fix this system. We're going to do it locally. We're not going to wait for a vote. We're not going to wait for permission from anybody. We are going to implement this thing, and we're going to create so much abundance that people will be magnetized to use it. There's never going to be a top-down solution because basically the politicians are puppets for the bankers. They're literally, if you think of it like a private mercenary group, they're just, he who has the money makes the rules. So the politicians are literally acting on behest of the bankers. And from the Bible it says, borrower is slave to the lender. So the United States government, despite all of its power, right, the United States government borrows all of its money as a debt with usury from the private international corporate Federal Reserve. So that means the United States is slave to the lender or the creditor. The creditor is the sovereign. And that tells us everything we need to know, is we need to become the creditors. We have to stop being debtors. And the only way you become the creditor is to either have a lot of money, which we don't have a lot of money. We're broke generally. The leaders of the resistance, let's call us, whether you're on the left or the right, generally, most of the activists I know are pretty broke. We're always asking for donations. Like the biggest names in the liberty movement are almost always asking for donations, right? So we're broke. What we need to do is to become the creditor, and then we become the sovereigns. We're sovereigns without subjects. We don't want to subjugate anybody else. We want to be, and you ever hear Jesus is the King of Kings, right? Well, kings take responsibility. We are the kings and queens under our Lord Jesus Christ. And that's what we're doing by issuing our own money. There's a direct connection between our Creator Lord and us. He created us. Therefore, since we are born in God's image, we have value. We are able to create things and build things, and we have to respect that it's not governments that are valuable. It's not private banks that are valuable. It's not gold and silver or Bitcoin that's valuable. It's not Lincoln Greenbacks or Federal Reserve notes that are valuable. It's we human beings that are valuable. We are the source of value, because if we didn't believe, there's American Indians, or actually Indians in South America and different places, some of them were never grew up to believe that gold was valuable. You know what I mean? So think of it, their energy and belief, because they never thought that gold was valuable, they just look at it like another rock. But because we've been programmed to think that gold or silver or Federal Reserve notes are valuable, so what it really is, it's our belief and faith which is the value that makes any type of currency valuable. It's our faith. So it comes down to this belief thing. So it connects our belief in God and our belief in ourselves and our belief that we can beat these guys. That's what this really all comes down to. There's 2 billion Christians on planet Earth, right? And there's about, let's say, 100 satanic people controlling the money system. And by the Satanists controlling the money system, all of the Christians have been tricked into serving the Satanists. Isn't that just diabolical? And for Christians or atheists or Muslims or anybody, for us to say that we can't fix this, it's like us saying that in reality, the Satanists believe in their God so much that they've been able to create hell on earth, right? Because that's what we're living. They've created hell on earth because they believed in their Lord Satan, right? Alternatively, I'm saying we need to believe in our God and ourselves, and then we will create heaven on earth, because we will have unlimited funds to create heaven on earth, just like the bad guys have unlimited funds to create hell on earth. And that is the foundational change in thinking, the paradigm shift. We're talking about the fulfillment of prophecy. We're talking about the second coming of Christ, where we follow Christ. Jesus' the quote from Matthew goes, no man can serve two masters. You cannot serve both God and mammon. Mm-hmm. And we've been tricked into serving mammon because we believe these Federal Reserve notes literally with a pyramid from Pharaoh on the back. Mm-hmm. So we are serving this system. But if the thing is, those Federal Reserve notes wouldn't be worth anything if it wasn't for us. They're not valuable because of a handful of bankers. They're valuable because of all of us. So that's the trick, is for us to change our thinking into believing it's not the pieces of paper, the gold, the silver, that's not the value. It's not the government. The thing that's valuable, Paul Glover says this, who created Ithaca Hours, he goes, the people are the gold. And we have to change our belief that, if you watch TV, it's littered with commercials always saying how defective we are. If we're men, we don't have enough hair. We're not. I'm a short guy. We're not tall enough. We're not articulate enough. We're not athletic enough because we're not. We don't have enough money. We don't have the right cars. So the entire system is always beating us down and telling us we're worthless and saying how defective we are in all these different ways. But God says we're awesome, right? And that's the thing, is once we believe in our souls that we're awesome and all of us are created with unique gifts and artistry, and then we build our own businesses around those gifts and artistry, we issue our own money, we build our own independent society, and we have to do this locally because you can only do it from the bottom up. Mountain Hours has been around for like 2 years or so, but I wanted to make it more of a spiritual mission in the community. So for about the last 8 months, I've been, along with Brian and a couple of others of us, going to small Bible discussions. I've literally handed out CDs to every single pastor in the county talking about this issue, every single one of them, but repeatedly going to about 5 different small group Bible discussions. The reason being is at a discussion you can speak, whereas when you go to church, it's all top-down hierarchy stuff, and it's they never talk about usury, they never talk about Jubilee, they never even, a lot of them don't even think there's a problem. You know what I mean? Like it's just la-la land. So now when you bring this up in the small group Bible discussions, that's an adventure, and literally what we're trying to do is build, if you think about it, the money power, they corrupted Jesus' message, and they built a technology that they could export all over the world through, secret societies or whatever you want to call it. But ultimately, they corrupted the church so that the church no longer discusses any of these issues. And typically the pastors, we say they more or less went to scribe and Pharisee school, and they went through a system that was created by mammon so that the church became a servant of mammon rather than being a servant of God. Although the church does awesome things, I don't want to be really critical. They do a lot of stuff to feed the homeless. They have community dinners. They do awesome things with family daycare. The thing is, we are commanded to fix the root cause evil so that there's no need to have poverty. There is no war. There is no scarcity. There is no hate and conflict and division. And only by fixing the money will we ever get to the root of the problem.
Yeah, Wayne, how do you set this up before you visit one of these Bible study groups?
The Bible discussions are typically going on. These were already set up and ongoing in our community before we were ever around. They would just, they would talk like general politics. They would talk about, they're kind of mimicking like Operation Mockingbird. They're mocking and repeating the stuff that they see on TV generally. And because of that, the TV never talks about the fundamental issue of the money problem on behalf of its paymaster. All of the institutions have been usurped. All of our institutions have been usurped. So what we're doing is going to these existing Bible studies. For instance, there's one of them on the book of Exodus. There's another one that they hop around in the New Testament, but it's each week we'll go through a couple verses in the New Testament, and the thing that's great is that Jesus spoke about money more than any other topic other than the kingdom of heaven and hell. Because Jesus spoke about money so frequently, Jesus introduces the topic all the time. First thing I do is I hold up a dollar bill and with the pyramid on the back. It's like, does anybody think this is Christian? And then from there is like we understand that this is a usury-based money system, and it's a mathematic impossibility for this system to do anything other than create perpetual debt. When we're in debt, as it says, borrow is slave to lender. If we're in debt, we're slave to the creditor, and God doesn't want us to be slaves to the creditor. God wants us to serve God, not mammon. We are trying to build a system of CDs and DVDs that other activists can take to their community, because what happens when you go in typically is you're the lone wolf. Like you're the one guy talking about money, and everybody's looking at you like you're crazy because they've never heard this stuff before. So what's valuable is we made up a CD with, like maybe 7 pastors all talking about usury. It's basically a collection of pastors who all talk about Scripture, and Pastor Chuck Baldwin's one of them, for instance. Yep. And now, rather than it just being some crazy guy, now we have a bunch of pastors talking about it, and now it's not just one of us, it's a whole bunch of pastors talking about, and human beings they want social validation. So by having more people talking about this issue, it gives it weight and validity, and because, when we're going into these groups, I mean, literally, these are often groups that they don't know anything about the Federal Reserve. They don't know that the Fed's private. They don't know about the 1933 bankruptcy. They're just ignorant of a lot of these topics. So you start off really slow, and it's important not to be too abrasive, and just take it slow and bring them along slowly so you don't scare their pants off. Because that's where, when you know how it goes, when you wake up and find out some of the evil stuff going on, like false flags and all that, it scares your pants off. And that's not the direction that we try to go with it. We try to use the Bible itself as the basis for truth. We are trying to create a white propaganda system to bring the usurped church back to the word of Moses and Jesus, to see how specifically that this same sort of tyranny existed thousands of years ago, and the path to winning our victory is exactly because the soul of humanity doesn't change. The technology changes, but the heart of mankind doesn't change. So the path and the solution is the same now as it was 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago.
The last 2 Christmases, my family has volunteered our time, our trust, our energy to an organization called Feed My Starving Children. You go into a big sort of a warehouse, you put a hairnet on, and you clean your hands, and you pack food that's sent overseas to people who are starving. And but in each case, little kids, a mother, father, grandmother, we're all exchanging something of value in the form of our hands, our attention, our time, and we're packaging things. And a great value is created right then and there. The assembly of people coming together, creating value, and that's something. When I thought of this call tonight, I thought, there's got to be an example that I can share. Well, just working with your hands, but that was very tangible. It was real for all of us to volunteer our time, our trust, and our energy, and do it in that way. So that's for you. That's an exchange. We are issuing. Am I correct in saying I am the issuer? We are issuing energy, and there is a production process that's created, and everyone benefits.
Yeah, if you think of that as a time credit, like, for instance, in mountain hours, if you did that sort of work, potentially 1 hour is worth equivalent to $10. In, I think, China or somewhere like that, this is what they do, right? If you pick up some, like a can, like as a can as a piece of garbage, or a recyclable can or a recyclable bottle, if you bring that into a vending machine in the subway, right? Yep. So you're taking your energy. You did something the community wants. The community wants to be clean. You picked up something that was sitting on the ground. You took that bottle. You put it into this a reverse vending machine, let's call it, and it kicked out a token that you could then ride the subway for free. Wow. So what was the basis for the money? Mm-hmm. Energy, something. Energy. So the community, the community decides something that's valuable. Do you want a clean community? Yes. All right. So here's a way that you clean it up. There's no government. There's no taxes. There's no big hierarchy. And it's a perfectly benevolent way. It's sustainable. There's no usury. And all it is a money system based upon a benevolent human activity in the exact same way that when you guys were making the meals for the poor. Well, that's how we build God's kingdom. You create. Just imagine, like right now, the majority of the money that is being created is for war and a police state. There's no, the war machine has no scarcity of money. The politicians have no scarcity of money. So if you think about it, they have, like, let's call it a negative system, right? The more negative you are, the more you're willing to kill, the more you're willing to enslave other human beings, athletes, entertainers, politicians, bankers, the people that do the least for humanity and actually are part of the bread and circuses machine. That's why athletes make so much money. They're just part of the Roman Colosseum, basically, to keep us distracted from our slavery. Yep. So they all get great benefits, right? But the beautiful, the benevolent, whether you're a Christian or a believer or non-believer, the people who donate their time, they have to volunteer it, but they're the ones who are literally trying to build the kingdom of heaven. Mm-hmm. It's so messed up. And there's this phrase that goes, it goes, part-time Christians can't defeat full-time devils, right? So the devils on planet Earth, they're making huge amounts of money to be full-time. Like if you're Dick Cheney or, to work on both sides of the aisle, if you're George Bush or if you're Barack Obama or whatever, they get paid really well. And, the bankers make a whole lot more money than they do, but they're everything. They're living like God on earth because they're the engineers of a system that all of it does is has perpetual war, perpetual poverty, perpetual hate and conflict. And they're the beneficiaries of that. So alternatively, there's absolutely and they're doing that only with a couple families. Let's say it's 100 people or something. So rather than us complaining about that, there's absolutely no reason why we can't all become full-time revolutionaries once we believe in the message. And there's a verse of scripture that goes, and this is so important, is to have a vision for victory. It goes, for lack of vision, my people perish. right?
Mm-hmm.
But because my people don't have a vision. Like, what is our vision for victory right now? Where is it? Where are we getting traction? Where, I see Ferguson, and it's the same thing that I saw in Occupy 3 years ago. You have the mercenary police on one side, and you have the protesters on the other side, and they're protesting and getting beaten up and tear gassed and rubber bulleted. And in the meantime, it's literally the bankers laugh. The creditor is going, look, I've just engineered another conflict between debt slaves. Debt slaves are fighting debt slaves. And that's what they're doing. They're just puppeteering this conflict between our brothers and sisters, and they do it on a small scale with like a Ferguson kind of thing. They throw in some agent provocateurs with a mini false flag, let's call them, and COINTEL programs. And that's all they do on a grander scale with, say, ISIS and, larger scale COINTEL, whatever you want to call it, Gulf of Tonkin, et cetera, et cetera. And by their system, if you think about it, their whole system thrives off of division and hate. The more division and hate that we have, the more power that they have. Their power grows the more divided we are. And that's the only way they can rule with a tiny minority, is they need to divide and conquer us. But alternatively, when we start loving one another, say, I love you, brother, you have awesome skills, let's forget this system. Why I believe in you so much, you can issue money, you're awesome. I've heard you sing, I've seen some of the songs that you've made, whatever it is, you issue money. Once he issues money, that singer, songwriter guy, he goes down to the local coffee shop and he could buy some coffee with the song he just wrote. Do you know what I mean? It changes a society built upon the physical world. Mammon controls the physical world. But the only place that we revolutionaries, we love revolutionaries, the only place that we have advantage is in the spiritual world of love and truth. That's the only place that we have advantage. And therefore, we need to base our money system on love and truth and our own energy. Call it a love currency if you want to. If the only money existed on planet Earth was based on love, how much money would Rockefeller have?
Yeah, not much. Nothing.
Yeah, that's the paradigm shift. But all of us all of you get on this call every week, you do it not for money because you love the truth. You love humanity. You're resistors. You're fighters. Like, it breaks your heart to see what's happening to humanity. But you do it for free. But the other guys hate humanity, and they get paid for it. Why can't we love humanity, get paid for it as a full-time job, and emancipate this planet? That's our mission. I mean, it really is. It's our mission as human beings. It's our mission as Christians. It's our mission to that's literally, think of the phrase, turn the table, right? Mm-hmm. Turning the table. It's where it looks like everything's going wrong. There's fighting in the streets. Black people hate white people. The cops are beating the police down. It looks like it's inevitable that there's going to be World War III. But then the people believe in their Savior, and the tables turn. They believe in themselves. They finally believe in themselves, and the tables turn.
Yep. The small.
Amen.
Some things happened to me today that was indicative of your presence on the call tonight. It was really strange. I won't go into the details, but I was in the presence of a guy who worked for Discover Financial. And, the phrase, it pays to discover, and I dropped him off there at the Discover Financial Center headquarters, and I said, my God, isn't that something? Here I'm at Discover Financial, and the phrase, it pays to discover, evoked this truth that you talk about. It will pay all of us to discover the truth of these matters. And coming out of there, this lady came out, and she was in my car. Her name is Grace, so I thought of the word grace the grace of truth. And then the third guy, well, a hell of a long ride, but he was actually a Texas Hold'em poker gambler. I drove him all the way down. He had a history of coke, criminal activity, and everything else. But, I had a nice conversation with him, but I just thought, my God, here in one morning, early afternoon, 3 diverse personalities, all in connection to the topic of tonight in terms of the extraction of usury, credit card, Discover is probably a very prominent example. The need for grace and the female component that attends to that, and then the battle against addiction, gambling, and everything else that seems to be a byproduct of this current system.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that issue up with addiction, because that's really what this is that we're all addicted to a toxic currency. And the addiction is terminal. It literally means the destruction. And it's intended to be this way. The currency, usury, let's call it, a form of parasitism, it will lead to the destruction of all creation, all God's creatures, the planet itself, and it's absolutely essential that we take up the cross and with all our heart and soul say, no, this is not going to happen to our children. We're not going to let a dozen Satanists rule over a planet of beautiful people. We're not going to let it happen. It's so absurd that we've come to this point. Like I use this expression, we've become like a dog who begs its flea for its own blood. Right? We produce all the value, but we're always living in scarcity. And so the point is, on the addiction thing, is the first step to addiction, and I think everybody here is, we all admit that there's a problem, right? But when you go into the church, lots of the church people, like, they might think there's a problem where, like, they think it's capitalism, or they think it's government, or they think it's all these other things. But what you have to do is bring them. Well, Jesus didn't say in Timothy, it goes, the love of money is the root of all evil. You know what I mean? And the love of money is usury. It's because it's when you love money more than you love human beings. It's when you love money so much that you use money as a tool to subjugate humanity. So we want to use money as a tool to emancipate humanity. It's not that we love money, we love humanity, and money, we focus on money just because that's the way that the bad guys conquered and enslaved humanity, and we just want to develop the quality alternative so that people will use, because right now, just imagine there is an abundant system that we could just use just as easily as we could pick between an IBM computer or an Apple. That's how simple the change could be, is we just, you know what, I keep buying IBM computers, and they seem to get bugs all the time. But if I buy Apple, it never gets bugs for whatever reason. So I'm going to buy an Apple because it's less hassles. And if you think of the bug as usury, it really can be that simple. It's just we need about, maybe $100 or $200 of software. If we had as good a software system as, say, like Bitcoin does, the problem with Bitcoin, it's kind of like, if somebody wanted to pay me in gold or silver, that would be great. The problem is, or Bitcoin, the problem isn't that I'm not willing to accept it. It's just that it's so scarce that the people who do have it, they either hoard it or they have very little of it themselves. Whereas when you create an abundant money, and for that matter, Federal Reserve notes. I don't have Federal Reserve notes either. So we don't want to replace an already scarce money system known as the Federal Reserve System with an even more scarce system as gold, silver, Bitcoin. We need an abundant money system because, again, the foundational change is only going to happen when, think of it if we were celebrities. right? We would have so much money that we could hire our own private guards, right? Well, that's how the elite are. The U.S. military and the police, they're effectively the private mercenaries for the bankers.
Yep.
And the only way they're going to come, the enforcers, the only way the courts, all of the institutions really, like every institution works for the bankers in effect, otherwise this stuff would be on the TV. So the only way the media, the politicians, all of the institutions, the courts, the judges, et cetera, the only way they're going to work for us is if we have more ammunition of influence, money, than the bankers do. And what will be the things that we can offer them that they would join our team instead of the bad guys' team? Well, number one, they can save their soul. That's number one, because they can work for God instead of mammon. That's pretty big. They don't have to subjugate they're no longer working for the 1%, they're working for the 99%. So they're working within a system that is fair to everybody, not just the super elite. I want to talk about this specific strategy about getting into the church, because once the church is down with this revolution, each church has a lot of different businesses. And when people buy into this as on a spiritual level, you guys that come on this show, you've bought into this revolution at a spiritual level, going all the way back to Aaron Russo, and because you're warriors for truth. This isn't about making money. It's just your soul. I must do this. This is my way to contribute. I want to be informed. I care about humanity. I want to resist tyranny. Once you get Christians in your local community to buy in, to recognize that truly, indeed, the love of money is the root of all evil, and that this system is based upon usury, which is a mortal sin, that it's controlled by Satanists, and that we've been tricked into serving Satan, they're going to want an alternative. They're going to want to use a currency which isn't serving Satan. So that's the path that we're taking to try to broaden this message in the local community. And I wanted to bring Brian on because he's been a valiant warrior with me, a nonviolent Christian warrior who's experienced this. So I was hoping to have him come on just to kind of...
Brian, feel free to interject here. We welcome you on the call. Really, really appreciate what you're doing with Wayne out there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, so we have, thou shalt not be to him as a usurer, neither shalt thou lay upon him usury, in Exodus 22:25. And in Proverbs, it indicates the end times might be when the rich rule over the poor and the borrower is slave to the lender. Now, every child right now in America is born about $55,000 in the debt, and that was the last time I checked. Because you got to keep up with it every day because it goes up. That's the definition of an indentured servant or a debt slave. And then if you go and you ask any American adult right now why he can or she can issue their own money, and they'll just we can't do that. It'll seem like a crazy question, which also is the definition of a debt slave, because there's like 7 guys and their families who have the power to issue out of thin air, create money, and will outspend us $1 billion to 1 and more if they want, every single time on every single issue, because they believe and have been given the power by us to print money, regulate the interest rate, how much money, all of that, in the hands of like 7 Satanist families. And we're volunteering for it. So, the prison of the debt slave is in the mind, is what I'm trying to illustrate. We have these families who don't believe they can't issue money, and they're doing it, and they do it for the most evil reasons, and that's why we have the world around us as it is. So, so going into church is fun. It's a good time, I think the basic deal is to just show up. You become one of the guys, because, people are open to other guys, usually it's a men's Bible study, many are open to it, but there's also, what I think has been called rabid ignorance against it, and often we'll get into discussions about, taking the entirety of the Bible, as what is to impact the person. So you have, say, Romans 13, or Romans 13:8 says, owe no man except to love him. But then there's a whole bunch of stuff about, could be taken as, follow government to the letter of the law. So you fall into all this nonsense, I think, because the idea of being a Christian is trying to emulate, follow, learn from, etc., the ministry of Jesus, So he's the guy. he's the manifestation of divinity. He's God here who had all foreknowledge and made the demonstration of getting physically violent and fashioning a weapon when he just saw the moneylenders in the temple. Meanwhile on the cross, he's like, hey, forgive them, for they know not what they do. So, it's Jesus's, in my view, opinion of hypocrites, those who should know better. And this is some tough information, I think, but it's just a challenge. I feel the honors class in life gets the most difficult homework. So here we are. We're going to have to understand and walk, be as best as we can, the body of Christ, that is, the best as we can, the body of Christ, be the message and the messenger at the same time. And what happens when there's a usury-free monetary system is there's no need, there's no will, there's no applicability in the system to hoard money because everybody's issuing it. So when the entire system is usury-free, you don't have to run around telling everybody, like, don't lend money, because people will come up to you and go, well, hey, this guy's getting paid, I'm getting paid tomorrow, so if you lend me 15 now, I'll give you 20 tomorrow. What's wrong with that? That's fine. That would not happen. Okay, you're all issuing the money.
Hey, Brian, Wayne, can you guys elaborate a little bit on the Jubilee, the seventh year, and I think it was 40 years and 7 years. It was institutionalized to forgive debts, and take us back to those days in the Old Testament.
Okay.
When you go into these Bible study groups, that's got to be something that you can harken back to, and from an educational standpoint.
Yeah, and it's important to realize the 10 Commandments, where it goes, remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. There was a corruption, because now it says remember the Sabbath day. Remember the Sabbath doesn't apply to just the seventh day. It applies to the seventh year and the 7 times 7 years. And this, so it's basically, every 7 years and every 50 years is the way it's normally applied. And this was well known during the Revolutionary War era because it's Leviticus 25:10, I think it is. That scription is actually written on the Liberty Bell.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, proclaim liberty, and yeah.
Well, this is really important for libertarians to understand, is that liberty in the Bible means freedom from the money power, not freedom from the government. During Jesus' time, Rome was the puppet government. The money lenders that was the true power. So the reason why Jesus got violent with the money lenders, but the Romans, he never even had any harsh words for the Romans. The one Roman that he got his ear cut off right before Jesus was crucified, he actually put the ear back on the centurion. For that matter, one of the tax collectors was about to be killed by one of the zealots, and Jesus intervened and protected the tax collector, and the tax collector ended up following Jesus. So it's really important to distinguish is that the root of evil is not the puppet government or Rome. The root of evil is the money lenders who hire the mercenaries. As long as we're trying to fight the big behemoth government, we will never win because that makes it a physical struggle. We'll lose any sort of physical struggle. But if we make it a spiritual struggle against the tiny minority money lenders, then we will win because we have the numbers, we have truth and justice, and when we make the money system based upon a physical exchange or our energy, then because the money is based upon our energy, then we have the advantage. We will have more money than them because we can outproduce the tiny minority bankers. So getting back to the Jubilee thing, we should always think of liberty as liberty from the money power, the debt master. So it's like a minor correction there. It's not once you have liberty from the money power, and it's a sovereignty issue. We have to claim our sovereignty through a Jubilee process. Then once again, we will serve God rather than mammon. Then since we are the sovereigns, we are the creditors, we hire the enforcers. Now, because we serve God and then we issue the money, then the enforcers will work for God rather than the bankers and Satan and all. They'll be good. It's kind of like, you know how if you think of rewards, you can train a dog to be a pit bull, or you can train a dog to be roll over and sit and beg and do neat tricks, right? Uh-huh. If you think of money that way, money is just reward. Well, you can those men and women in uniform, they're not evil. It's just that there's a universal truth that goes, he who pays the piper calls the tune. Mm-hmm. Well, since the money lenders are satanic, they're calling a tune of evil, destruction, hate, division. They're deliberately engineering conflict between the police and the military and the protesters, because once we get wrapped into hate and all that theater, we focus on that. But when we focus on our own power and focus on becoming creditors, that's what they don't want us thinking. They don't want us thinking how easy it would be for us to just issue our own money and escape this paradigm through a Jubilee. So the way the Jubilee works is it's mentioned in a variety of times in the Old Testament, and it's in the New Testament as well. And what that means is literally, this is the most important aspect of it, is number one, because the debts are forgiven, we're no longer borrowers who are slaves to the mammon. Mm-hmm. So it's not that we just get our debts forgiven, which is nice. Yeah. The big thing is that we're not serving mammon. Mm-hmm. You're not slave to the creditor. We become the creditor, and we serve God instead. So the various aspects of the Jubilee is, number one, it's debt forgiveness. Number two, it's the release of prisoners, nonviolent prisoners from jail, mm-hmm. Which is a very significant. Imagine this. This is from the Old Testament. It's 3,000 years old, right? But think of, like, if we never heard of the Bible and we just made up a list of the things that should happen, pretty much what's written in the Bible takes care of them, even though it's 3,000 years old. Mm-hmm. So anyway, it's debt forgiveness. That's the national debt is $17 trillion. Each year we pay $400 billion in usury. It's all completely unnecessary. It's all gone. That's the national debt. It's our local debts and it's our personal debt. All of it gone. That's amazing. And the people who have legitimate investments, we can reimburse them so that nobody loses. We want to make sure that this isn't anything that harms legitimate people who have pensions and those sorts of things. So we have to, this is a love revolution, so we don't want to harm anybody, but the majority of debt that's out there has been born of war and invented for nefarious purposes and those sorts of things. So those people who were creating money, the majority that the usurers created in order to engineer war, and literally they're paying debts back from right now from like World War I and World War II just now. I don't know if you've ever seen those kind of stats. Right? That's ridiculous. A war that they engineered, they're still profiting from. I say, God in my conscience and any thinking person says no to that. So the Jubilee, so debt forgiveness, release of prisoners, It's the return of stolen land. The devil wants us to be born as debt slaves. What does God want for us? God gave us an inheritance. That's planet Earth. Think of that. God wants us to have an inheritance, and that our inheritance is the land. It's planet Earth. We shouldn't be paying rent to the moneylenders to use God's inheritance. Yep. God gave us the planet to use in the same way that the fish, birds, and animals use. And when think of how much peace we would have to expand our souls if we never had the pressure like that. We had a house, and we will always have this house if we want it. This is our house, and we don't have to pay fealty to the den of thieves in order. Think of that. Like, think of the absurdity. The Creator created the planet, not these bankers, but they think they're God, and we pay them tribute for the beautiful planet that God created. It's absolutely ridiculous, So, we have to look at nature. The animals aren't doing that. So the American Indians didn't do that. But in the meantime, the American Indians also had money, but they didn't have a national debt. So we should, move toward what's natural. So anyway, the Jubilee returns our inheritance to us. And if you think about the story of Joshua going into the Promised Land, the Promised Land is our inheritance if we are righteous. The problem is like, there'll be people that are very strict Bible people that believe every single word in the Bible is absolute fact. And I just think the Bible is like it was corrupted by man. It was written by man. And like, I believe that the Israelites, in order to be righteous people, you can't go into a land and steal it and kill everybody there. I think what really happened is they were a tribe of righteous people, and they said, you are enslaved under a system that we were enslaved under while we were in Egypt. We emancipated ourselves. We set up these new laws where there's no usury and there's a Jubilee. The land is your inheritance. God gave it to you. We're going to come into your land, and we will help you emancipate yourself from your usurers. The Jubilee is the path. They help, because that's who would you be impressed by, the nation that went in and slaughtered everybody, or the nation of Israelites that went in and they learned the lessons in Pharaoh while they were slaves? They came out of that and they helped emancipate other people. That's what I believe in my heart, because that would make them God's chosen people, not by killing and slaughtering people. Planet Earth has enough of that lie. So I think what happened when any group of people beats the bankers, and I think the ancient Israelites beat the bankers because the evidence is in their law. It's in the Old Testament. And I think what happened, like any good counterintelligence or the victors write the histories, I think that Mammon went in and rewrote, and they demonized them as being violent in the exact same way that they do counterintelligence or COINTEL or false flags. The people who are peaceful, the evil ones, always demonize them as being violent. That way, it always creates a divide and conquer strategy, and it corrupts. We never have any honest heroes or examples of people that beat the bankers, because I don't want to go around slaughtering people in order to create the Promised Land. I want to create the Promised Land by offering people the invitation to a much better way of living, an invitation to heaven on earth.
Wow,
right
that's pretty good. Brian, you want to interject something?
Oh, well, yeah. Right now I'm looking at the lyrics for Untukumu, Malaysia, the Malaysian Jubilee song. They had a National Jubilee Day a couple of years ago, and it was nationwide, the Christian community of Malaysia. It was all about Jubilee, this thing. Like they're ahead of us, guys. I mean, this is a nationwide thing. You can get the lyrics online. the flute music online. They had this thing in a stadium. The thing was jam-packed. It was a giant stadium. It looked like, a halftime show about Jubilee. And, yeah, the whole Christian community in Malaysia is down with Jubilee. Because it corresponds, I guess it's like their 50th year free from somebody, some conquering colonial power. So I'm just saying, this is not a strange idea. It's really catching on somewhere else. Anybody, just looks YouTube Malaysia Jubilee. You get a good kick out of all the celebrations. I just concur with what Wayne's saying. Like we're 3 generations deep since the Federal Reserve Act. All this crap has happened. We got to reset. We got to declare a Jubilee and take the power back. Take the issuance of currency power back and the mechanics of that currency back, because it was ours to begin with. It's just a symbol of our energy.
It's really, really important to understand that Jubilee is a natural occurrence, just like seasons. It's a natural, or what happens is there's always been one war on humanity. Mammon disguises itself as being capitalism or communism or fascism, and then it finances these wars to make it seem like it's all these other things. It makes it seem like the Jews and the Christians are fighting, or the Muslims, but really what it always is, it's always Mammon, which is Satan, monopolizing the money system, throwing some usury on it, making this, creating this unpayable debt that grows exponentially so as to create perpetual slaves. That thing manifests like a cancer on planet Earth. It creates Babylon because they have unlimited funding in order to create confusion that people, like, if you ever see that meme on Facebook, like, if there's one thing that you could eliminate on planet Earth, what is it? And you'll see like 100 different answers. And that's exactly the confusion that Mammon wants. They want some people to say socialism. They want some people to say greed. As long as we're in Babylon confusion, we don't know what the enemy is, we can't win. Particularly, you rarely see people say mammon or usury. And there's this phrase that goes, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world that he didn't exist, right? So a lot of people don't even believe there is a devil, even people that are Christians, and they can't even fathom how deeply psychopathic these people are. You know what I mean? It's just, for an honest person or just a gentle human being, Jesus says, he has a really good quote on this topic. He goes, I'm putting you out into the world as sheep among wolves. You need to be as gentle, as innocent as doves, but as wise as serpents. Mm-hmm. So you have to have, like, on one hand, we are to be peace lovers and gentle and kind and loving, but what kind of happens is we're truthers, like, we're in a different arena, like, but the average person in church, because it's scary to investigate these topics of false flags and finding out literally that the whole system is engineered to kill you. I mean, literally, like, our food, water, air, minds, everything has been poisoned as part of a depopulation program in order to kill us. And that's scary to find out. So when you wake up, you go through that process where they call it the grieving process, where you're in denial, and then acceptance, and then depression. You go through all those phases, and then you pump out of that thing, and then, like, you want to go live off grid. You don't know what to do, and, like, you're isolated because you can't find anybody else in your community that's willing to talk about these things. But then there's another part where you're Christian, and you have this part of you goes, you know what? I want to flip the tables on these guys. I want to beat their butts, you know? And that's where you finally come to, like, hey, it's like, literally, if you think about it spiritually, the people that we're fighting are, you guys know the Lord of the Rings story with Smeagol? That really creepy guy that's like, my precious, and he's like like always coveting the ring of gold. Well, that's what these guys are. They're little coward snakes. Like, you can never be spiritually strong if all you've ever done evil in your life, you know? And that's how these people are. They're really cowards and weak, and they're a tiny, tiny minority. And it's time for us to really get organized. There's a great quote by Martin Luther King. It goes, "Those who love peace must organize as well as those who love war." So what is the peace lovers' money system? International money system that's abundant, you know? It doesn't really exist right now. And as soon the bankers won because they did one thing, is they focused on money, and they focused, and they were disciplined. They didn't focus on, like, you know, for us, the bankers create a lot of theater so that we talk about Ferguson, we talk about ISIS, we talk about the NDAA, the labeling GMO food, and there's all of these symptoms. But like Thoreau says, for every 1,000 hacking at the branches of evil, there's one who strikes the root. Jesus didn't go after the Romans, even though the Romans were evil. The Romans did evil stuff. Jesus got violent with the moneylenders because he struck the root of evil. And that same discipline is required of us, because if they can do it, we can do it. We can focus and create a money system. We just have to focus.
Amen.
You know, we're all born with these great gifts, and you see people do things, like whether you're the police or the military, but there's like this girl in our community who was broke, and she was like couch surfing, and she like took a bunch of odd jobs. And then finally, she literally moved to Las Vegas to be an escort. And you think about how devilish it is. The Rockefellers and the Rothschilds, they teach their children at a very young age that they can issue money, right? Yep. But we never learn that. We are never taught that basic foundational skill that all of us, and here's the thing, it's not just a thing that we could do, it's our responsibility for us to issue our own money so that we control our commercial energy, so that we don't unwittingly serve a tyrannic system like that we have right now. So we really need to change our educational system, because if we don't learn how to do this, unfortunately, just think that this girl who had complete despair is going to go sell her body.
Yeah. My God.
All because we've been kept in ignorance through ages. And like I said, this is, we're talking about the fulfillment of prophecy. We're talking about the millennial, where it's 1,000-year reign of peace. And the way that millennial, that age of Aquarius or peace is going to occur is that the people take their power back. We become responsible. You ever hear the expression, "my oath is my bond"? Well, that's literally what you're doing when you're issuing money. Like, I am a strong human being. My word is my bond. I will fulfill this contract. And there's no limit to contracts. Like, any one of us can make any number of contracts that we want. There's no limit to contracts. I am, however, if I'm a restaurant owner, I'm limited to how much food I can create. So the limitation becomes not how much money we can create. That's not the limitation. Like, think of anything that ever needs to be fixed. Like, I need to fix my car. I don't have enough money. We need to fix the roads. We don't have enough money. We need to fix the environment. We don't have enough money. We've been programmed since birth to say, well, once you know that money is just a contract and there's an unlimited amount of contracts, the point is that there's no reason that virtually every county in the United States can't create its own kingdom of heaven with absolutely unlimited funding to create self-sufficient, a self-sufficient food supply, a self-sufficient energy supply, because you're never faced with that question, we don't have enough money. It's the biggest lie that we've ever been told. Lack of money. It's like saying there's lack of inches or lack of contracts. Mm-hmm. There's no such thing as a lack of contracts. So as long as we're willing to build those things, I'm not saying we're just going to create a whole bunch of money. Just like the restaurant owner just doesn't create a whole bunch of gift certificates. He creates the food, and that's what's backing the money. So I'm saying we can make a stadium, like, think of Jerry Jones made that big old stadium down in Texas, right?
Yep.
Why can't every community, rather than making bigger stadiums for the bread and circuses war machine, why can't every community make a stadium-sized organic aquaponics structure where it's got fish in it? You can do it year-round.
Yeah.
It's the most healthy food ever created with unfluoridated water, like the best of the best of the best. Is that valuable? And as long as we believe that's valuable, you can create all the money you want in order to build that thing. So what I'm talking about here is each of our communities, we have to have a bigger dream than, like Martin Luther King said, I have a dream. Well, this is our dream, a future of unlimited potential that we can have right now, immediately.
So the dream gets realized. It becomes real. It's actionable. It's acted upon in the now, in the moment.
That's really what we're talking about, is creating the kingdom. You know how you're talking about the manifesting of dreams? The bad guys, because they control the money, whatever sinister dreams that they conjure, they can manifest them in reality because they control the money system. Their dream is our nightmare. Alternatively, our dreams are their nightmare, right? Because everything's backward, right? So that's what's so powerful, is once we take the power of money back, we can create the kingdom of heaven. That's the point. Like, we literally, and it's all in the Bible. Like, literally, all of this is in the Bible. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed. Even though it's the tiniest seed, the mustard seed is super small, eventually it grows so big that you can live in it. Well, that's what he's referring to, is if we always focus on the hell on earth meaning Ferguson, ISIS, whatever is on TV, and they're trying to get us to focus on kingdom of hell, the more we focus on that, all we're doing is kind of, in a way, it's the bankers saying, look how much power over you we have. Alternatively, when we focus on our power, when we focus on the mustard seed, even though right now it's just like this little tiny idea, the more we focus on it, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Like we created it in mind, we blueprint it, and then we build it in the real world so that eventually, just like the birds live in the mustard seed, we eventually live in the kingdom of heaven. That's what he's talking about. Like, this is real. The kingdom of heaven is at hand as soon as we believe. Jesus' first proclamation to announce his kingdom is he proclaimed Jubilee in Luke 4:19. And he said then, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me. He has anointed me to preach good news to the poor, to heal the brokenhearted, to preach liberty to captives, to proclaim the year of our Lord's favor. This is the good news of the gospel, that we can emancipate ourselves, our loved ones, planet Earth. We can do this. We can do this. There's nothing stopping us other than ourselves. There's nothing stopping us. He was mad at the scribes and the Pharisees because they were not obeying Mosaic law. They didn't have a jubilee. They were participating in usury. The money lenders were controlling their system. So while their words proclaimed their obedience to God, their deeds were serving mammon. So he called them hypocrites, and the very same thing exists in the church today. Our Creator didn't view material things as his greatest creation. Jesus' greatest creation was his children. That's us. We are born in his image. So the most valuable thing on planet Earth is us. We have enough value to back all the money we ever need to create the kingdom of heaven. We have enough money. We have enough people. We have enough truth and love. It's just time to get down and focus and build it. Time to start building.
So we, the people, are the value. We are the value. That is a great phrase.